Hey friends, it's Jennifer Savari, and today I'll be sharing how I made this notepad along with the acetate notepad holder. And I love how the acetate shows the different colors of the notepad through, so each time something is torn off and used, a different color will show through, creating a new look. Many frame dies would be absolutely beautiful with this, but I used the daisy frame from Poppystamps' new release. And I die cut two out of heavyweight cardstock and glued them together for an extra thick piece. I cut a piece of acetate the same width of my die cut so it would fit perfectly on top. And then I just made two scores, leaving 1/4 of an inch in the middle for the 1/4 of an inch notepad that I'll be inserting in there. Next, I just glued the frame to the front and then set that aside. Any paper will work to do a notepad out of. In fact, even dark colors with a gel pen would be super fun. But I chose the Gingham from Birchpress Design, and I cut them into 4" by 4" squares, and an assortment of colors just mixed together. And I cut these myself with a guillotine trimmer, but I know that the office supply stores will also cut them perfectly for you. The big thing is to make sure that two of the edges are lined up as perfectly as you can get them so that they're nice and flush. I'm going to show a couple different ways to do this. There are many ways, and these are the two probably most unprofessional, but they worked really well for me. The big thing is to line up the paper along two edges so that you have very flush top to put that padding compound on. And the first way here is by using little clippies, but see the little gap there with that front piece? You would probably lose that front piece doing it this way, but this technique does work and it's super simple, so I wanted to show it. So the padding compound is not paint and it's not glue, it's kind of a mix in between, and it dries fairly quickly and it dries pliable. So using a paintbrush, I applied one thick coat to the edge there, the straightest edge I could get, and no more than one thick coat. If you layer the padding compound after the first layer dries, it's doing nothing for the purpose of the notepad. All it's doing is adding a bulkier padding compound. So one thick layer and let it dry. So super simple, but you do see that bottom like I mentioned there, and so here is, I think, a better way to do this. So the better way I found was to use these little sample tiles. You'll see me use these in a lot of different videos for adding weight to dry things, but I sandwiched the notepad in between two pieces, and that gave a really nice, heavy, solid surface for that to rest in between so that there were no gaps. That's what you want to avoid when making these notepads, are gaps in between the papers. And here's kind of what it looks like if you can see that when it's wet, and you can see that the one side is perfect. You know, the other sides are not because I cut these myself, like I said, but you can get as perfect as you want with these. And then I just stacked several marbles on top just to make sure that it was nice and heavy. Here's another way to do it without having to pick up the marble tiles or books if you're using books. You can just sandwich it in between as perfectly as possible, and then because the padding compound is so thick, it's really not going to run, and you can just leave a little edge sticking out in between and just paint it on, and then you don't even have to mess with it again. You can just leave it stationary right where it's at to paint and dry. I let these dry for about an hour and a half, but they were dry to the touch after about 20 minutes or so, but they just made a great fun notebook. How fun is that? And so I also wanted to show how easy it is, like if you made a really thick one and wanted to make several notepads out of it. Once it's dry, I just took a craft knife and cut down the edge, and look how easy it comes apart. And you have a perfect little notepad from the notepads. So if you wanted to save time, you could make one thick one and cut it down. So next it was time to score the acetate. And the big thing here is I wanted to work on the back side so that I didn't mess up the front daisy frame. And so I lined it up as perfectly as I could, looking at the bottom edges there. You'll see here in a second I was lining everything up along the bottom, and then following that score based on how the acetate would close. Even though it's scored, it's a little finicky, but once you make that score, it is solid. It's going to stay that way. So to make the second little score, it's really not fragile. I just, have that little 1/4 inch space there to put the notepad in. And so I just scored that along the back end as well. And then I just kind of molded it once the score lines were made. So this could be left clear and the little notepad could be glued right in, and you could just be done that way. I put in a backing and I wanted to show how I did it. I wanted the backing to go along the top and the back. And sometimes measuring just gets me in trouble, so I found it was easiest to line up the back and then mark where it hangs over, and that's going to be the little center dimension that I need. And so I scored along that line that I marked, erased the pencil line, and then used my bone folder to make it an extra crisp fold there, and that fit the little center perfectly. Measurements show that it should be 2/10, but it was just not, there's something about the creases in there or something that were making it not fit perfectly. So that was the easiest way I found. Next, I started off with a very straight edge on some tape, and I actually cut it. This tears really easy, but I cut it so it was just perfect. You really don't see it from the top, but I just wanted it to be consistent all across the top, if that makes sense. So then I just laid it in there and then used my bone folder to adhere it down, and it made the perfect little top edge there. I embellished the daisies with some little sparkly Swarovski crystals. I just used my tape runner to apply some adhesive to the back of the notepad, and that made it really easy to just adhere it to the back of the notepad holder. Now this could be embellished and decorated a million different ways, or just left flat. I did put a little Prima Marketing flower into the center there, and just thought that that added a really cute touch. And here's how it looks with the different colors, and I love how it just gives a completely different look with each color. So it kind of changes as it's being used, and the dimension as it's being used only increases with the shadows that the frame provides there. And I hope you have as much fun with this project as I did. Give it a try. Thank you so much for stopping by today, and I hope you have a great day. See you again soon.